This is Death's Door, published by Devolver Digital. Over the past decade or so, this publisher has become one of the most well-known and, in terms of sales, one of the most successful publishing houses within global independent video gaming. All of this comes from Acid Nerve, with a core team of only 5 people, with the studio leads Mark Foster and David Fenn based out of Manchester in the UK. They previously found success with Titan Souls, which came out back in 2015, with there being little doubt Death's Door takes from and builds upon its challenging boss-based combat. So with that introduction and preamble all taken care of, I'll cut right to the chase. I loved playing this game. For me, given the size of the team, the scope of what's on offer here, and the overall quality of the delivered product, Death's Door is nothing short of a triumph. It follows a similar path, and takes inspiration from the likes of the classic Zelda franchise, with their also clear nods towards some of the type of combat you see in the likes of Bloodborne and the Dark Souls series, although in Death's Door, only at a superficial level. The main boss encounters and their mini equivalents can be tricky, although with the exception of the last major battle before the endgame, they play out in a way that's challenging rather than utterly brutal, as seen in those Gothic-inspired battlers. As an overall cohesive experience, it radiates with the sum of its parts, be they the combat, the level design, the fairy tale-inspired overarching story that interweaves across the 10 or so hours of the main game, to how this further develops in post, to the clever and yet instinctive puzzles, to how graceful and effortless the character moves throughout the overground areas and dungeons, and finally, how the musical score and sound effects help further sculpt something that orally has me looking as far back as something like Journey or the more recent Cuphead, for how it elevates this game to something just short of greatness. And remember, all of this comes from a studio with a core team of only 5 people. Death's Door really is very special. Death's Door sees you, a crow, employed by an organisation called the Reaping Commission. The game gets going as you finish your bus ride commute to work, before jauntily making your way past security, up a few flights of stairs before a fellow crow hands you your latest assignment. It's a delightful beginning, all set to a simple but evocative piano background, with an accompanying rising and falling strings, its minor key perfectly matching the faded grandeur of the office environment, with litter strewn about the entrances, unemptied rubbish bins and black sacks of rubbish about the place, with the walls adorned with faded and tatty posters. Aside from a neon shop sign and a splash of red close to the security door you trigger upon your arrival, the only other colour comes from the slight yellow notes from your character's eyes, and from your weapon's red glow with it slung over your corvid shoulders across your back, with it resting just short of the floor on your left-hand side. With your assignment under your wing, you head on out through a doorway, having appeared within the office space, and in so doing, you've commenced your journey. What follows upon first entering this door is a brief and perfectly functional tutorial, which gets you up to speed with your character's movement and combat controls. I've no issues with any of these, and found all of them to be perfectly suited to the demands soon to come your way. Death's Door doesn't shy away about showcasing the type of gameplay and boss battles you can expect, with the first of these challenges coming at you after less than 5 minutes of getting going. The first encounter, against a thrashing plant-like demonic forest spirit, sees you dodging its swirling vine-like appendages, with this initial encounter mirroring most of the boss battles that follow. While my typical playstyle would be to make liberal, and if able, total use of ranged attacks, in Death's Door, you can't do this. Ranged attacks are limited at first to a maximum of 4 such strikes, before in boss encounters you must strike an opponent with your melee weapon to recharge these ranged abilities. It's this gameplay loop that leads to a combat loop that errs to the side of repetition, with fight after fight following a similar progression. I'd stay out of the way for as long as possible, using the ranged weaponry before going in close to try and get 1 or 2 hits on the target before rolling out of the way to avoid getting hit. The same holds outside of the boss battles, with the roll and dodging and slash mechanism becoming a key skill to master, as the enemies tend to follow similar patterns of behaviour, be they looking to use a rush and grab approach, use a ranged weapon in the form of a fireball or arrow, or in the cases of these blobs of slime, they come at you with protruding spikes and a little bit of a knowing and cheeky smile on their faces. Some might consider the combat on offer here as being simplistic and one-dimensional. Your melee weapon is limited to what's essentially a single light, medium and heavy attack. There are no options to chain attacks together or build up combinations, neither can you block or parry attacks. You are, however, able to use your melee weapon to bat back baseball style some of the fireballs, and in what's another nice little touch, there are instances where enemies are able to take damage and be killed by way of other enemy fire. As for your ranged weapon options, at the onset, these range attacks are limited to a bow and arrow, although as you progress, the game rewards you with new abilities where you can produce a fireball, a bomb, and a grappling hook, which are at best thought of being part weapon and part of your overall puzzle and problem-solving toolkit. What's more, all of these ranged items can also be upgraded by, yep, you guessed it, taking on and defeating 4 different bosses who look like minotaurs, which in themselves offer some of the toughest fights in the game. I'm also a huge fan of how Death's Door does away with enemy health bars. To assess the relative health of an enemy, you must gauge this by way of, well, let's call them red damage cuts and scratches that grow and creep over their surface as you inflict damage. The more of these you see, the greater damage they have sustained, until they fall on the ground, having been vanquished, and in the case of some of the mini and larger boss battles, you get a fine little bit of slow motion documenting their final moments. All in, this aspect is very deftly put together, as are the different worlds and places with which you're able to get out and explore. They each follow a similar design and begin with an outside area, before moving indoors to dungeons where players essentially move from room to room, where there's equal puzzling to enemy-based action, before the player is guided towards the final piece of the section. Let's come on to the end of level bosses. Each of them are exquisite, each of them having their own backstory and rationale for what they've done in shaping their parts of the world to fit, for right, and mainly wrong, their individual scenarios. The Witch and Frog King are my personal highlights. Oddly, the third of these 3 bosses, a giant yeti, I found somewhat underwhelming and was able to send her packing with a single playthrough. This can't be said though of the final boss this side of the endgame, which sees you needing to draw upon all of the skills you picked up in what's a lengthy set-piece battle that saw me dying many, many times over, with a middle section bereft of checkpoints that feels designed to rattle and infuriate in what's an exceptional uplift in difficulty from anything preceding it. There's no denying this is a challenging game. As I alluded to earlier, it isn't Dark Souls difficult, and yet it is a tough play. At the time of launch, and I have no insight into any possible future updates, Death's Door offers no difficulty or accessibility modifiers aside from the ability to reduce or turn off screen shake. For my enjoyment, the difficulty is just about right, as are the placements of seed pots which are used to heal you, as are the placement of doors which lead you into and out of the various parts of the connected world. Outside of the final battle, when you die, you respawn at the point of the last door you travelled through, although on no occasion did I feel the route back to the place where I had just died was too long or difficult trek back to restart the action. However, as might be expected, it isn't perfect. There are a few issues here and there, most noticeably while your character becomes a silhouette when behind other objects, which makes it easy to see where you are while hidden away from the camera. However, the same doesn't happen for other on-screen characters. In places, this can make combat a little bit difficult, as you can at times be unable to see where the enemies are in relation to your own character. However, in my personal experience, this didn't happen all too often, although it's worth being aware of the possibility. However, what never bothered me is how all of this looks, which for the most part is simply stunning. The greens and greys of the lost cemetery, to the reflections on the floor within what must have been once a warm and welcoming family home, the ancient ruins with their weird and wonderful inhabitants, and also the mountains with their snow-capped peaks and sections of ice, which sees your crow skidding and sliding all about the place. What's more, once the main quest lines have all been taken care of, there's still plenty more to keep you engaged within the endgame. There's artifacts to find and yet more bosses to defeat, and if you want to go out there and find it, a true ending as they call them, which is one of the finest moments in video games I've seen for years. All in, I'm just over the 22 hours mark here, and I've just about hit 100%. So yes, Death's Door is pretty special. And just to reiterate, it's head and shoulders at the top of the list of games I've most enjoyed playing so far this year. Many thanks for watching. If you've liked this review, please hit that like button and drop a comment down below. If you haven't done already, please consider subscribing to the channel with the notifications turned on to stay fully in the loop of what the best of indie games have to offer. Thank you once again. I'll see you next time.